Matthew's gone, but he told me right before this that he can't wait for the Steelers to win the Super Bowl, that he just believes that they're the best team in the league, and that he might even give up his fandom to be a Steelers fan. And I told him, hey, man, you should really keep your fandom. Like,
What are you doing in here, man?
oh, hey.
What are you doing?
No, nothing. Welcome, everybody. This is During Work Hours, where we talk everything fantasy football and some other stuff too, while we get out of some of the work we have to do. We were at a little bit of a late start today because I had nonstop meetings, but Matt was getting real mad at me. He kept calling me and sending me pictures of what he was doing just in
The
preparation.
people want us. I have some of our loyal listeners saying, I can't just keep refreshing Spotify when you guys drop episodes on different days every week.
Yeah, we're a little inconsistent at the start here. It's because these divisions are so much to talk about, and me editing these all together, it's not easy, people. It is not easy. This type
It's
of
true.
production level, it takes hard work. So yeah,
Look at we must be talking about the AFC North today or
we're
something.
talking about the AFC North, which we'll go over more later, but I will say I could not I'm gonna be as unbiased as possible when I talk about the AFC North, but I had to show you that I don't play when it comes to the Steelers. We got Franco Harris here, known for the immaculate reception, one of the greatest plays in NFL history.
Is that a Najee jersey?
We do. This is a gift from Ryan Katai. I was a groomsman in his wedding, and he gave us all jerseys, and he bought me a
Wow.
Najee jersey. We've got Hines Ward up here.
I didn't even see that one.
Yeah, Hines Ward, one of the great receivers. Same generation as Troy, maybe my favorite um, Steeler of all time. And obviously we have TJ Watt. This was a gift from my friend Kirk Wilkinson, who just called me up one day and was like, "Hey, who's your favorite player on the Steelers right now?" And I was like, "It's probably TJ Watt." And then he said, "Oh, and who's Haley's favorite player on the Cowboys?" She's a Cowboys fan. He just like sent us jerseys, and I'm not
That's so
talking like
nice.
he got them off of like these are nice like from the store jerseys. So this was a gift from Haley, the Steelers hat, and this is my prized possession. This is the Myron Cope Terrible Towel. Myron Cope was our radio announcer for a long time, passed away in '08, but he in 1975 they were trying to come up with something to get people excited for the season and for the playoffs, and they wanted something cheap that everyone could carry, but they didn't feel too gimmicky. And they came up with a terrible towel, known as the first team to kind of come up with this towel. It took off, and a lot of it has gone to different charities, the selling of it. I've had this for a long time. I got this at Heinz Field when I went and did a stadium tour and walked through the locker room, walked on the field, and it has never touched the ground. So if it falls during this meeting and touches the ground, I might be gone for like 10 minutes to cry.
Okay, two questions then. So you don't use it when you get out of the shower to like cleanse your body, you know?
Matthew, that blasphemy will not be spoken into
And
my
my
ears.
second question is, do you think you are the biggest Steelers fan in the state of Hawaii?
Probably not. I'm a fan. The way that I became a fan is another embarrassing story for Justin. Is my mom dated my football coach, who was from Pittsburgh, and when I was like 10 years old, and he would invite us over to his house to watch Steelers games, and I just became a fan.
You're loyal.
I'm loyal. I'm not the biggest fan. There's people who have tattoos. I would never get a Steelers tattoo. I might get our podcast tattoo.
We have tons of news for you all. We have been delayed releasing this episode, so that's probably a nice way to put it. But because of that, a lot has happened. So we're gonna kind of do a quick news update on what's happened around the league the last week. And we're also in preseason week one. This is Friday, August 9th. So we had our first preseason week one games yesterday. Hall of Fame game was after we recorded last week. So the main hitters we have, we have some big injuries to go over. DeAndre Hopkins got injured in practice last week. 4 to 6 week return table, right around week 1. Don't expect him to miss much of this season, but if we hear he's going to, or it seems like it's lingering, Calvin Ridley takes a little bump there. My beloved Puka Nakua has been injured. Sean McVay, though, very trustworthy coach in terms of coach speak, has kind of reiterated that he has no threat of missing week 1. It doesn't sound serious and is more precautionary, but we'll be watching that one. Similar kind of notes about Christian McCaffrey. But this one I think hits home for people a little bit more. He's been injured in the past and they'll hold him out all of preseason. I think that's more just cue the Matt and Justin are correct in not taking him number 1 overall. I told you so. I would be nervous if he was my number 1 overall pick for that reason. Other short ones, we got Jonathan Brooks. Coach says he's going to be ready week 3, week 4. Kind of what we expected and is what we've really been assuming when we've been talking about him. And then Ayuk trade is really gaining steam. And this one I wanted to save for last because your Steelers are kind of in the mix for Brandon Ayuk. And I think this would be the biggest fantasy implications.
Guys have some pretty big implications in this fantasy world. Some other news from my end is it's 2 guys I wanted to point out that have been really fun to watch, especially for us, is obviously Penix is still just like
Big Michael P.
Big Michael P. Every time he gets on that, I see news constantly of him just like beautiful throw, beautiful throw. Falcons are blown away on Michael Penix's throws. And so, you know, if nothing else, put some pressure on Kirk Cousins to try and perform, which gets me excited for these other Falcons players. Other news is CeeDee Lamb. Jerry Jones came out and said there's no sense of urgency to get a deal done. We are not urgent in this at all. And he tweeted this, and CeeDee Lamb tweeted back just a simple LOL. And so there's a lot of talk that he might not be there week 1. And that does scare me. It's starting to scare me a little that they might not get a deal done by the start of the season. I got to imagine they do.
Yeah, I would imagine they do too. There's no way Jerry lets that go, but I think the only implication is if you draft early, I would maybe move CeeDee back a couple spots to kind of hedge that news. That being said, hopefully people are mainly drafting late and that we have more of an answer come late August, early September before week 1 actually starts. But yeah, I agree. I imagine, and we'll make the assumption that he does play for them.
Cool. Before we get started, I showed you a picture earlier of something that the Cardinals are going to sell at their games. Oh. And it is a cotton candy burrito. What are people thinking? And I'm also curious, I would love for people to send us in their favorite weird stadium foods that they've seen. So
wait, would
we'll post this on Instagram, but
between you and me, if you were at a stadium, would you order it without like losing a bet or being prompted? Like, would you just order it out of curiosity?
Absolutely not. One, I think it's probably going to cost like $15+. It is filled with what seems like Fruit Loops, sprinkles, M&Ms. If it's Skittles, you don't mix those kind of. That's weird.
It just seems like assorted candy filling.
Yeah, and it's like a big size. It's like boom, and so no, I would feel sick to my stomach.
I think I would be the friend that would be pressuring people to try it with me.
I know you would. I know you would be that friend.
Let's get into it, y'all. AFC North, NFC North. We're going to start AFC North with a team. Who are we talking about first, Justin?
You know, it felt only right, Matt, to start with the one, the only, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yes. The Steel Curtain. I'm going to try and be as unbiased as possible when I talk about the Steelers. Obviously, it's hard when you're talking about your favorite team.
I'll be here to hold you in check if we need.
Hold me accountable, people. Obviously, there's a little of the bias will sneak through, but integrity is important, so I will do my best. And we'll start with this QB battle we've been talking about, and that's Wilson and Fields. They are battling it out, and I think what's going to end up happening is Wilson will win the starting job, at least for week 1. But there's going to be a battle all season. The minute that Wilson, if he starts playing bad, people are going to be calling for Fields to start. Fields is more exciting to watch, probably, especially with Wilson being 35. The QB battle makes me not want either of them in a fantasy sense, but I do think that Wilson has the better floor and Fields has the better ceiling. Where do you think that Russ finished last season, Matt?
I think I'll put him at QB 16.
He finished last season as QB 12.
That surprises me.
That's super surprising. Everyone has this conversation of Russ is washed,
Mhm.
but he scored more points per game fantasy wise than Joe Burrow, Tua, Trevor Lawrence, and Geno Smith. He's not done. I know he's 35, and I'm not saying I'm aiming for him at a fantasy play, but if I'm like streaming QB and I start seeing Russ kind of put together some good games, then I'm gonna consider taking Russell Wilson as a streaming fantasy quarterback. Fields is the one with the higher upside. He finished as QB 17, even though he missed 4 games last season. We saw what he could do when he gets the keys to the kingdom. He averaged the same amount of points per game as Anthony Richardson and Patrick Mahomes. If you want to stash someone that could be a top QB, that's Justin Fields. He is going as QB 24 as a backup right now. And there's a reason for that. It's that he's a top 10 QB if he's starting for the team, in my opinion.
I'm gonna disagree with you a bit, not on the Fields part, but on the Russ part. I'm feeling a little feisty today.
I love
Russ,
it.
Russ isn't streamable in my eyes. I think he was back when he used to scramble when he was on the Seahawks. He just has started to scramble less and less and less, and I am worried that he will be good for real life and not fantasy. I would be very interested if Fields took over just because he's a cheat code and Arthur Smith loves to run the ball even more. Arthur Smith kind of being one of the bottom 3 passing rate offenses the last 5 years really scares me from someone like Russ for fantasy, but that's kind of my biggest pushback there.
Yeah, and I do want to say, I'm not saying right now he's a streaming quarterback. I'm saying that he still has a high enough floor that he could be. So
Mm.
keep an eye on it. Because if you get a couple weeks in and he's had some big games, then I would consider streaming him. But as of right now, you're right. He's not a streamable quarterback. He's 35. And who knows how he'll be with the Steelers. Yeah, moving on to the people that these guys are going to throw to. It doesn't really change my rankings for these guys, no matter who's throwing. And we'll start with Pickens. Pickens just has an insane catch radius. We've seen him make some of the craziest catches in recent years. His ability to pull off these circus type acrobatic catches is pretty up there, very reminiscent of a young Odell. He finished wide receiver 13 when Deontay Johnson was out. And with Deontay now with the Panthers, Pickens could break out. I think the one thing that is stopping me from Pickens is similar to what you just mentioned for Russ is Arthur Smith offense. It is a run first offense that tries to utilize as many people as possible, whether they're a star or not. It almost feels like Arthur wants to prove that it doesn't matter if he has stars or not. His offense will be successful, so he wants to try and plug as many people as possible. He might keep Pickens from breaking out. What doesn't scare me away from Pickens is Roman Wilson. He got hurt in training camp. They're saying it's nothing serious. He is a talented guy. I really liked him at Michigan. I'm still kind of going back and forth on if he is a NFL wide receiver or not. We see some of these college wide receivers put up these big numbers and then get into the NFL and totally fade away. I don't mind taking a flyer on him in like best ball or really big leagues, but in a 12 team, I really don't want him at all. He is wide receiver 75. I have him at a little higher at like 69. But there are a ton of vacated targets. Who that does impressed me more with, besides Pickens, is Pat Fryermuth.
Yeah, I like that.
Fryermuth finished tight end 30. Little bit of a lackluster year. He is tight end 15. He's my 13. And the reason why is I think he's due for a bounce back year. I would kind of call him a poor man's George Kittle. And I don't think he's worse or whatever. It's just that George Kittle does everything. And because he does everything well, they use him everywhere. And that keeps him from maybe just being a receiving tight end. And it's the same thing for Fryermuth, is he's a great blocker. And so they try and get him in the blocking scheme as much as possible. The line was a struggle last year, but the line has made a lot of improvements, which I think means Fryermuth does not have to be used in the blocking game as much. He finally has, hopefully, some decent QB play. He was awesome his first 2 years, and so we've seen what he can do even with spotty QB play. And with the loss of Deontay, I think Fryermuth is going to pick up a ton of targets, and he's going to be a safety valve guy. You're going to see him get a lot of balls in the middle of the field more so, and I think some possible in zone targets.
Yeah, I agree with both pass catchers actually. Big ceiling for Pickens. Talent's there. It's just a matter of if he actually gets the opportunities. And I kind of I heard a another podcast kind of say a funny thing about him. The thing they didn't like was his undisciplinedness in running routes, and they were like, he might not need to improvise and make these circus catches if he actually ran a route, which I thought was kind of funny and kind of true a little bit. So he could get more discipline there, but I don't think it matters who the quarterback is. Both Russ and Justin Fields love to lock on to the deep ball target, and they also love the middle of the field. Their tight end, Cole Kmet, and in past years with Russ, he loves tight end as well. Excited about both of them. Fryermuth is really like one of the last tight ends I'd consider grabbing if I was the last person in my league to not draft one. Pickens, his ADP is a bit high right now, so there is a bit more risk there. Maybe as preseason goes along, we'll see how Arthur Smith is going to run this offense. But I think I'm more excited about who you're going to talk about next, which is the running backs.
Yeah, these running backs are interesting. We've got Najee and Jaylen Warren. And Najee is kind of, I think people have been a little bummed out by Najee just because they had such high hopes for him. He did finish with his third consecutive 1,000-yard season. He had 8 TDs. The reason it feels like a big disappointment is he finished as RB26 and Warren finished as RB24. And so I understand why people are like pretty put off by Najee in that sense. But we are seeing right now, Warren's going 28. Najee's going as 24. We've seen a lot in our mock drafts is that Jalen's going even higher than that. What that kind of tells me and what I think is a lot of people expect Jalen to kind of take over. And I just don't believe that, although it is going to be a pretty split backfield. Doesn't scare me away from getting Jaylen Warren. I just think the price is way too big for him. Jaylen Warren is my 35. Najee is my 23. And Najee, I'm not saying is a top 10 back, but his price is too low.
Yeah, I would plant my flag on Najee. I think one, is the better human. He works really hard, practices really hard. It's a
I love
contract.
his personality. Like,
Yeah.
he is just so fun and nice.
And he's in a contract year. He has to prove it if he wants to get paid by not just the Steelers, but any team. And so usually running backs in contract years are a bit better too. So he's who I would plant my flag on to and constantly falls in drafts. So I think he's a fine value.
The floor is very high for Najee, in my opinion. What do we got? Over, under?
8.5 wins. I take the over. Tomlin will not have his first losing season, not this year. And so give me the over 8.5.
Give me the over. If Tomlin was going to have a losing season, I think it would have been last year, and we somehow pulled it off. Our defense is way too good to slip under 8 wins. In fact, Matthew, I have us at 11 wins.
Ooh, Homer.
There's maybe where the bias is leaking in a little bit, but I stand by it.
I think the fantasy tip for the Steelers is once you hit week 6 and you get all this awesome production from them because they've had the easiest first half schedule of any team, then start trading them like crazy to all your league mates because they have a brutal fantasy playoff and down the stretch schedule.
Who do we got next, Matthew?
We're starting the NFC North off with Go Pack Go. We're talking about the Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love. And NFC North is fun to talk about specifically for us because in this home league that we play in, we have three people, Steven, Josh, and Dan, and each of them are fans of the Packers, Vikings, and Bears. I asked each of them, I didn't tell any of them that I was asking the other people, but I just said, I asked for some fantasy tips, asked where they thought their team was going to land record wise in one sentence about their team. This is what Steven had to preview for us for the Packers. Packers this season are a powerhouse on offense with weapons all over and a pure shutdown defense. This is the year 13-4 record prediction. Man, Steven is hyped on his Packers. Jordan Love, everyone is a fan of him. He got his money, got paid. I don't know if I agree with everyone. There's a whisper in the back of my head. Remember those first 9 games, Matt? And I'm a little worried that the highest paid quarterback in the NFL might not live up to the money. And right now, for fantasy, he's going as QB 10. He averaged 14 rush yards a game, which is not good. In his highest scoring week, he never had over 30 fantasy points. That being said, he averaged 19.4 fantasy points, which is a very, very solid floor. I don't think Jordan Love will win you weeks, but he will keep you alive, and you're not going to lose because of him. He's fine for me, but he's going pretty high in drafts, and I would much rather take a higher upside shot than Jordan Love.
I think that's super fair. I really want to like Jordan Love, and I don't know what's holding me back from liking him like everybody else does.
It's that irrational take.
To be fair, my claim that I'm not a big Jordan Love fan is that we've seen such a small sample size. But then if you look at Anthony Richardson, and I'm all in on Anthony Richardson with even a smaller sample size, I need to hold myself accountable a little bit. Yes, he's QB 10. I have him as 10 as well. I have him right where the industry has him, but it's hard for me to do. And honestly, if 9 QBs are taken and I have all my other roster finished, it's going to be so hard for me to take Jordan Love. But I will because I should. And the ceiling is high for him. And you know what? I'm trying to force myself to like Jordan Love more. So
I'm not taking him. I'm purposely putting him up on draft boards so other people take him in auction drafts, especially Steven. Steven hasn't been a very loyal listener to us, and so he probably won't even realize this. But I'm gonna just spill my strategy right now. For everyone in a league with Steven, just put the Packers up and let him go. Let Steven get all of his Packers. He's going to draft like 6 of them, and then he won't realize what he's done. Aaron Jones goes to division rival Vikings, who we'll get to, and they bring in Josh Jacobs. Current ADP is 42, came over from the Raiders. My worry here, head coach Matt LaFleur said he wants to be a committee still, and that they're going to rotate in A.J. Dillon and Marshawn Lloyd, their rookie they drafted. Don't get me wrong, I think Jacobs is clearly the best back of those 3 and will get the majority of work. Pretty solid line, and I expect a lot of scoring in this division. I think he's a pretty safe running back 2 on your fantasy team, and I largely like where he's going at ADP 42. I'm just not crazy in love with him and don't think he's going to lead the league in rushing like he has in previous years. Where are you at on Josh?
Yeah, he's running back 12 right now, which is where I have him, but I think I might even drop him a little bit. He just looked very different last year than the previous years that we've seen. Pretty inefficient and missed some time with injury.
Let's play a little name game then. You know how this works. Josh Jacobs or other running back. These ones I think will be kind of tough for you, okay? Josh Jacobs or Joe Mixon.
Right now I have Joe Mixon lower. but I actually think I'm going to move Joe Mixon above Josh Jacobs into that 12 spot and go Joe Mixon.
Josh Jacobs or James Cook?
James Cook.
Josh Jacobs or Rashad White?
Josh Jacobs.
Josh Jacobs, Isaiah Pacheco.
Josh Jacobs.
And Josh Jacobs or Ken Walker.
Give me Ken Walker.
Kind of tough, but that's where
It
he's
is
going
tough.
around. So I largely don't think it's that bad of a price since you seemed kind of flip-floppy on some of them. But let's get into the pass catchers because this is the most interesting bunch of probably almost any team in terms of fantasy. I'm going to list them here because we have four of them that might be fantasy relevant. We have Jaden Reed, ADP 79, Christian Watson, ADP 89, Romeo Dobbs, ADP 134, and Dontavian Wicks, ADP 156. Now, I don't mind taking a shot on really any of these receivers because I do expect this offense to be pretty decent. And I imagine one of them is going to significantly smash that ADP. And I imagine the other three will probably not. That being said, I'm kind of avoiding most of them just because of the 49ers Chiefs offense problems. You never know who it's going to be on any given day. And there is receivers in those range that I would much rather have like consistency from or are on an offense which with much less competition. Although, if it does mean anything, I will plant my flag on Reed just due to the eye test. I think he is the most talented, and I am most excited about him, which kind of shows his ADP is the highest as well. But I think this is going to be a pretty maddening situation for fantasy managers, and that's kind of why I'm largely avoiding it. The interesting tidbit, I asked Steven to rank all four of them too. Steven ranked them as Reed first, Dobbs second, Wicks third, and Christian Watson fourth. So take that as you will from a Packers fan that thinks they're going to go 13-4.
That's interesting. I think a lot of people have Christian Watson as number 2. I guess that surprised me. Here, there is some injury concerns with Watson, so maybe that's why he has him so low. But
Would you plant your flag
honestly,
on Reed too?
he's number 1 for me, sure, if I'm gonna get anybody. But I'm staying away from all of them. There's too many guys that we've heard is gonna be the guy for the Packers, and they've all been pretty inconsistent in terms of like one will have a big game and then the other will have a big game, and I don't know who's the guy. And the reason why I'm not going with anybody, and if I was, it would be Reed, is just his price is too high. I just don't think I could get Reed from anybody else, especially if I'm in a league with Steven.
We're giving Steven some love today.
He can have all
Last
4.
last pass catcher, Luke Musgrave, tight end 17. I'm not really going to talk about him unless you're in a super deep league. He should be on the waivers. And the other thing to note, this offense vacated 96 targets, a decent amount, although I expect some of that will be going to the running backs because most of those were probably Aaron Jones. And I don't see the offense changing too much from last year. Largely, it's going to be figure out who the receiver is that takes over and Josh Jacobs that I'm looking at. And we have a pretty big win total here, 9.5. I'm going to take the over, but barely 10 wins.
I'm going to take the under, but barely 9 wins.
Right where they want us.
We're going to move over to the Cleveland Browns. If you were to describe the Browns, I think you would say maybe unsexy. And it's maybe Cleveland in general. If you're from Cleveland, I'm sorry. I actually heard it's a great city that's very underrated, but I would describe it maybe as unsexy. It's unsexy picks from the top to the bottom. And we will start with the top, and that is the QB, Deshaun Watson. I'm not going to talk too much about Deshaun, but he has a super high ceiling, but also a very low floor. We all know that he's capable of top 5 QB play because we've seen it with the Texans, and it wasn't that long ago. I just am not targeting him at all. He might be a good QB flyer late with crazy upside if you miss on a lot of QBs that you could get. I know maybe you feel a little bit different, but He finished as QB 35 and he missed much of the season due to injury. He's QB 22 right now and he's my 19. So I have him a little bit higher than industry, but at 19, I'm not aiming for him.
Yeah, all I'm doing is just keeping an eye where if something starts to pop week 1 or week 2, I want to grab him off the waivers because I know what he's capable of for fantasy. And so he can really break the game in terms of his rushing ability. But at this point, because the floor is so low, it's I have to see it.
We are going over to receiver with Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy. I have talked about Amari a lot. He is Mr. Consistent, very similar to guys like Pittman and Mike Evans, maybe while not being as flashy. He finished 14 last season, and he's wide receiver 25 right now. He's someone I'd be really stoked to get at that price, especially if he's like my wide receiver too. I am so excited. He has only finished under 1,000 yards receiving twice in his 9 seasons in his career. He caught 5 TDs in every season, at least, usually more. Yeah, he's someone I'm aiming for because the price is low. Jerry Jeudy, I'm not really targeting, but I can understand why somebody would take a flyer on him. He's fast, he has big playability, and he's a pretty low price. I just don't believe in him, so I'm largely staying away from Jerry.
I want to push back on Amari just a little bit. I feel like Matthew Berry is a controversial like fantasy analyst. I think he's fun and great. He releases this article where he says 100 facts before the season and you can decide how to interpret them. And I think the ones about Amari Cooper are very interesting. So I'll read them. I won't say anything and we'll just look at Justin's reaction. Okay. Last season, Amari Cooper, career high, 1,250 receiving yards, finished as wide receiver 17 in points per game. Last season, week 16, with Joe Flacco, he had 11 catches, 265 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 51 and a half fantasy points. That one game accounted for 21% of his total yards and 22% of his total fantasy points. Without that game, on a per game basis, he averaged 12.5 fantasy points and would have finished wide receiver 32. And he's now currently going way higher than wide receiver 32.
I don't care. He's been disrespected too much. It's fine. Matthew can say whatever he wants. I still think Amari's been Mr. Consistent and has had very inconsistent QB play. So I believe in him. Moving on to tight end, David Njoku. He had an awesome season. He finished tight end 5. He's been a breakout candidate basically since he's entered the league. And we finally got to see glimpses of it this past season. Despite finishing 5, everyone has him as tight end 10 across boards right now. He's my 8, so definitely better than the industry. I'm not necessarily aiming for him as a top tight end, but if I miss out on a lot of those top guys, I'm not mad if he's one of my tight ends.
I feel pretty similar about him. The only call out is he basically scored all his points with Joe Flacco, so we haven't seen it really with him and Deshaun. And I think that's largely why the industry is a bit lower on him than where he finished last year.
And if I'm honest, if Jameis does take over at QB at some point, which is a high possibility with Deshaun's injury history, I actually like everyone a lot more in terms of receivers because he's that classic
YOLO.
YOLO play, and that just makes it fun for everybody else. But I do think they'll not win many games that way. Finally, we go over to the running back situation, which is a very interesting situation right now. But they are two guys who, Jerome Ford, I think we both like Jerome. He finished RB15. He is RB41, despite Nick Chubb possibly missing a lot of games. And that is just way too low. We both like him at that price. I have him as running back 35. I might even move him up a little bit just because I really think he has what it takes to be a great back. The only thing that is keeping me from maybe going all out for Jerome Ford is Nick Chubb. I have him one spot above at 34 just for the upside alone. He is a top 10 running back if he's healthy. If you have an IR spot in your league, I would not mind picking him up just to hold him there. He might be the best running back in the NFL if it was talent alone. It's just the health.
Yeah, my big 2 cents here is largely fantasy football is a weekly game. Like if you can win your weekly matchup, that's all that really matters. And so if you can get the running back that gets to have the full workload because the other running back's on an injury, that's going to help you a lot, especially in this situation where I think the Browns bye is week 9 or week 10. It's pretty late. I would imagine there is a good chance Nick Chubb is not fully returned in action until after their bye, which, if you're drafting Jerome Ford, shocker, you won't have him for fantasy football playoffs, which sucks. But he may be a good reason why you are 8-0 coming into their bye week or 9-0. And now you almost have a playoff spot secured. And your cost for that was what, ADP 100 and something? And so what like he is so low right now for someone that I think will get all of the work at the start of the season and can get you off to a really good start, and that's why I'm really targeting him. I'm pretty worried about Nick Chubb returning to form, and I'm worried about both running backs cannibalizing each other at the end of the season. And so we'll kind of see how that shakes out injury wise, but Jerome Ford, I love a lot as a late round target.
What is the over under?
Browns are also at 8.5, and I am going to take their under.
I also have the under. I have him right at 8 wins.
Right at 8 wins. We're gonna move back over to we'll call this the sexy team, America's team, Detroit Lions. Everyone kind of wants a piece of this offense because Ben Johnson is a wizard. And that's the great thing. Ben Johnson did not get a head coach job. He will still be their offensive coordinator, probably the best offensive coordinator in the league, with probably the best offensive line in the league. And this team is going to be a force on offense. And right now, they have Jared Goff, quarterback 14. He's going to be a big goose egg with his legs, but he is streamable if you are on a bye week pinch or dealing with an injury, going to have a pretty solid floor every week, will not lose you your week, but again, isn't usually going to get you much over 20 because he's a zero with his legs. I don't know if you have anything to add on Jared.
Not much on Jared. The floor is very steady for Jared, but the ceiling is very low. And so if you like playing to just make playoffs and you just want to load off on other positions and get him, makes sense. I don't really want him that way because I want some big games for my QBs.
Yeah, I would agree. Running backs, though, we got Jahmyr Gibbs, year 2 loading, ADP 11, and David Montgomery, Monty, ADP 59, both running behind, like I said, the best offensive line in the league. And they just love running the football in Detroit. This is how Dan Campbell wants to win football games. He wants to beat you down, and then when you're down, he wants to beat you a little bit more. And that's what this team is going to do. They are going to run all over you. And last season, there was so much hype with Jahmyr when they drafted him in the first round. And I think people who drafted him were largely disappointed at the start of the season with just how much of a split this was. But towards the end of the season, it did start to favor Jahmyr a lot more. And this offseason, they've actually started saying that it's going to be even more than it was last year. And so I'm pretty excited about Jahmyr. And I do think Montgomery is going to have a bit of a drop off. Montgomery turns 27. Jahmyr is a young spring chicken, so he's doing fine. But let's take a little guess, Justin. From weeks 10 through 18, how many touches do you think each of them averaged per game?
Maybe 12 touches?
Okay, in Montgomery.
Give
So
me 8 on Montgomery.
Jahmyr 14.4 touches per game. So I'm including receptions.
Oh,
And
I was
then
only including rushing.
Montgomery 15 touches per game. So it's basically a 50-50 split. Montgomery still at the edge. However, the interesting thing is on those touches, Jameer averaged almost 15 fantasy points to Montgomery's 13. And then from week 10 on, Jameer was the fifth best running back in fantasy, and David Montgomery was number 13. So I think there's value in both. Jameer just has the way bigger ceiling for me. And if anything happens to either, arguably the best technical handcuff is the opposing running back there. But I am pretty excited about Jameer at his price. I think he's not going to be a bust at all in the first round. And sky's the limit for him. The only thing kind of in his way is getting that volume.
Montgomery, I don't really want at his price, strictly because I think all of his value is in red zone right now. I think he did get over 1,000 yards last season, but I don't think he's going to repeat that, and especially because the coaches are very much pushing Jameer. I do think he'll get that early back work, and he will probably score over 5 touchdowns. I imagine maybe even closer to 10, but I don't think he's going to do much in terms of yardage or receptions. It is Jameer season, baby. I think it is starting now. He is my running back 5.
The man in Jameer. All right, let's get to the pass catchers because it's a little bit different this year. We do have the sun god, Amon-Ra, ADP 7. So firmly in the middle of that first round. You will have to pay up for Amon-Ra. And then the other one that's interesting that's getting a lot of hype lately is Jameson Williams, ADP 115. And this is why I'm a bit worried about Amon-Ra's price because of how much they're hyping up JMO this offseason as their wide receiver 2 and getting him more involved. I'm worried that more of the targets will be dispersed between Jameson Williams, talk about Jameer getting more targets in the receiving game. You have Sam Laporta, who just had one of the best rookie tight end seasons ever, and we'll get to him. It just feels like there's going to be a lot more mouths to feed for Amon-Ra to live up to that ADP 7 overall. And that worries me a little bit. I don't mind taking a shot on JMO though, just because of how cheap he is right now. And then let's kind of talk about Sam Laporta, ADP 31 and tight end 1 for the industry. We have a changing of the guard, which it's been a while. We have our sweet, sweet boyfriend of Travis or of Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce. Maybe we'll cue what's a good song here? Bad Blood. How Travis feels about Sam Laporta taking over his spot at tight end 1.
Cause baby, now we got bad blood.
I knew you were trouble when you walked in.
Oh, I like that one. Yeah.
Cause I knew you were trouble when you walked in.
Laporta earned it, and I love this kid, but similar worries about Amon-Ra with the price maybe not quite adding up with potentially more mouths to feed. That being said, he is my tight end 1, and I think the floor is immense for him. And it's just a matter of will he have as many boom games as he had last year? But if he falls just a tad in drafts, I really like taking him. ADP 31 is what I said. Yeah, ADP 31 is a bit pricey right now, though.
Yeah, I disagree with you a little in terms of Amon-Ra. I have him as my wide receiver 3. I am full
Whoa.
on a believer in Amon-Ra. He's finished the season so strong, just crazy last 4 games, and they weren't even his best games. He was a little more sporadic throughout the year, but not bad sporadic. It was like 15 points and then 26 points and then yeah, so I really believe in the sun god, and I will continue to. And that doesn't take me away from Laporta. He's still my tight end 1 as well. But what it does do is I'm pretty low on Jameson Williams. I know there's a lot of hype around him. I just don't believe in the hype. I think he has had some big injuries. He's had some off the field issues, and I know that they're talking big about him, but I think he might have a big game here and there. I don't think he takes away from the other 2.
That's fair. Yeah. Yeah, largely my argument is if the offseason hype does live up, then I think there's going to be too many mouths in that
Yeah.
offense. But like I said, Amon-Ra is very high for me, and Laporta is my tight end 1, 2. They vacated 91 targets. Star offensive coordinator decided to stay. This offense is going to be humming and similar to last year. But my main target is Jameer, and I don't mind Laporta if he falls. Over under is massive, 10.5. But with massive balls like Dan Campbell, you got to be willing to risk it. So I'm taking the over.
You love the term 12. You're a 12.
Yeah,
You Seahawks fan, and that's how many wins I want to give them. Give me the over.
halftime. Any ad you want to talk about, or person in your life that needs some airtime?
My partner's gonna hate this, but if you are looking, she's not trying to like make this a business, but I think she could, and everyone tells her she is a very talented seamstress.
Oh,
Yeah, she has made some beautiful pieces. Do you want me to show you some?
yeah, actually I do.
Okay, 1 second.
Oh, in person. This is great.
I hope she doesn't get mad
Whoa.
because she is so talented. And look at this. She took an old quilt and made this fun jacket.
That's dope.
Very cool. And then she made this dress just from fabric. This is very like Hawaiian style, and the buttons are impressive. I don't think she'll get mad at me sharing these pieces, but if you're looking for a talented artist of a seamstress, and you're in the Hawaii area, give us a call.
Would you ship?
I would ship the pieces.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, I meant different ship. Like I ship that.
I'm getting, who is it? Kyle Juszczyk's wife does that and makes like
Yes,
awesome pieces. Man,
also
if
very
I
talented.
kind of want like a custom Haley that I can wear around.
Oh, what are you wearing? I'm wearing a Haley.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. I keep trying to convince her to like make me stuff, and she
That's
she
cool.
says no, it's fine.
We got to give our listeners what they want, which is the deets and the juicy meat. Okay, what is the next AFC North team?
We are going to the great state of Maryland. It is the Baltimore Ravens. We will start with the red hot Lamar Jackson.
Queen
I think
Lamar.
he speaks for himself as a fantasy QB. His rushing ability is bar none, and everyone gives him a hard time that he's a running back in the QB position. Two things I'll say to that. One, if you can give me a running back that's going to throw a touchdown or two in a game, I'll take that all day as a fantasy QB. Two, I disagree. He made huge progression in his passing ability last season, posting bests in almost all of his metrics, and he finished QB3, which is where I have him. But he's QB4 across platforms, so I'm a little higher on him than the industry. I just believe in him.
I love Lamar. He's my QB1. And largely, I think it's because he needs to prove it this year. Like everyone, like his legacy, I feel like kind of is weighted on this season. Like, can you make it to playoffs and actually do something more than the regular season? And I feel like he has a fire to do that. And I know you'll get into it, but I think their addition of Derrick Henry actually opens up the field a lot more for his play action and RPO. And it's a nightmare for defenses of you can't load the box because Lamar's just going to pass it. And if you don't have a spy on him, Derrick Henry could run up the middle wild. And so there's a lot of things the defenses need to focus on against this team, which I think is just going to let Lamar go absolutely crazy just all over the field.
Derrick Henry, always someone fun to watch play. We don't often get to see running backs like him that are given the workload with the style he has. Usually they are first and second down backs. Derrick gets it all. He gets the workload. He doesn't get as many receptions, but what he makes up for it is just huge yards after contact. He finished as RB8 last year. I'm interested to see what he can do with Lamar and Lamar can do with him, I think they're only going to benefit each other. And then, like you said, that now you have to kind of gauge the outside with your defensive ends, and they have to stay home with Lamar. Can't load up. You have to have your linebackers back in coverage. He's a little high for my liking. I have him at 10. If I'm in a PPR, I definitely have him lower. Half PPR, still a little low, but I like Derek a lot. He is getting older. There's some worry about injury, but I think he's going to be a decent fantasy running back.
I'm more excited about the price than you are, largely because he is an anomaly, it feels like, in terms of production, especially at his age. That's my big con is like, does age actually catch up to him? The same argument for Travis Kelce, but this is one where I definitely would rather be on the train before like it falls off. And so I'm kind of in on Derrick Henry at that price, and with an actual offense and offensive line this year compared to the Titans last year. He does turn 31 later in the year, and so that's my biggest con, but you can get him in like the third round, and at a relatively modest price for auction. I think he's like 40-ish dollars. I'm much more willing to take a stab on him this year because I think this whole offense could explode.
Keaton Mitchell was awesome. A lot of people expected him to kind of have a great season once he came back this year, but Derek kind of hurts that. But who it does excite me for is the person that always excites me, and that's Mark Andrews. He's going to kind of take over those dump passes, the seam routes, middle of the field. When he's healthy, he's one of, if not the best tight end in the league. He finished tight end 12, even though he missed 6 games. We know the ceiling is tight end 1, and the only thing hurting him is hurt. I'm still trying to get him. He's tight end 4 and he's my 5. Likely, the player likely, not the word. If Mark Andrews is down, I'm actually looking to get likely off the waivers for sure. And I would actually spend pretty big to get him because of what tight ends do with Lamar. Who doesn't excite me, that might excite some other people, is Zay Flowers. He's a tough read for me. He finished 27 and he is going as wide receiver 27. And a lot of people are hyped on him saying this is the receiver that Lamar's never had. But what I don't love is much of that big production came when Mark Andrews was out. And so I'm kind of staying away from him at his price. He's my wide receiver 31. If he falls to me, I'd be excited, but I'm not going to go get him at his price.
I definitely like Mark more. Zay interests me a little bit because last year their running game was pretty bad in terms of like pretty easy for defenses to say, we're not going to let Lamar run it or throw. You guys can beat us on the ground. And so I am interested if Derrick Henry opens up the field for the big playmakers like Zay. I know they've also been hyping up Rashad Bateman a lot, but that being said, I'm definitely much more inclined to take Mark Andrews as their pass catcher.
And give me that over under.
Over under 10.5. It's huge. I think they live up to the at least regular season expectations. Harbaugh is a good coach, and so I think it'll come down to, can Lamar prove it in postseason?
I got the over right at 11 wins.
We are going over to Josh's team, the Minnesota Vikings, Skull Nation. Here is Josh's sentence on the Vikings. 3 guarantees for Skull Nation: a frustrated JJ, a new JJ era beginning, and watching the Packers and Lions play post week 18. We are going 7-10. Not much hope from a Vikings fan, giving some love to the other teams in the division. And I gotta say, I largely agree with him. The Vikings not gonna be good this year. They might have one bright spot in fantasy, and we'll get to that. But largely, I think it's all going to start with their quarterback play. They drafted J.J. McCarthy. Terrible decision, if you ask me. Number 10 overall. He probably could have gone in the second round if they wanted to. But the funny thing is, he may not even be the starter for them. Sam Darnold is the one that's winning this competition. Both are not going to be used in fantasy. largely the implication for fantasy is that I am worried about the pass catchers because that's who's throwing to them. And right now we have Justin Jefferson, ADP 8, and Jordan Addison, much lower, ADP 100. I'm worried about this passing game. Jefferson's price is pretty darn high for it being a shaky quarterback situation. Jordan Addison had a DUI allegedly, and he will have a court hearing. I think it's October 7th. And the rumor right now is that he will get a 3-game suspension after that court hearing. And if that holds true, that would basically be week 5. You would miss him for about 3 weeks, not including a bye week. And so that's kind of why Addison's price is way down there. And I would imagine Justin Jefferson is going to get double covered almost every single game because there is no one else to guard, with TJ Hawkinson being injured. My big thing on TJ Hawkinson, he's going as tight end 16 right now. And I see him being drafted way too often for someone that probably is not going to play until November and probably not even return to play this season. If you have an IR spot, great. I don't mind if you put him in there and draft him. If you do not have an IR spot, you should not be drafting TJ Hawkinson. Do you feel differently on these pass catchers or quarterback?
Pass catchers, like you said, it's tough. I'm pretty low on Addison for a number of reasons. I think he really benefited from Kirk Cousins' play style, and which is just air it out. And he's just not going to get that. There's no Hawk. Like you said, this offense for me as a whole is just way down. And so I am largely staying away from everybody. The only person I would be excited about is Justin Jefferson, and he's my wide receiver 5. And I think he's always going to be gone before I even get a chance to get him, or his price will be too high.
The biggest thing that I just keep going back to Justin Jefferson on, I love the talent. I think he's amazing, but I can't help but get over, if I am a defensive coordinator and I am playing the Vikings this week, I'm looking at that team and I'm saying anyone but Justin Jefferson can beat me. I'm not scared of anyone else on this team. I'm double covering this guy, making sure he doesn't get the ball. Good luck. Part I am interested about for fantasy is the running backs. Like I said earlier, they got Aaron Jones from the Packers. Right now, he is going as ADP 62. And then one of my favorite sleepers, Ty Chandler, ADP 142. Let me just say this loud and clear for Justin. I want nothing to do with Aaron Jones this year. 5 straight seasons with fewer fantasy points than the previous one. Turns 30 this year. The coach has called this a 1A and 1B situation, and I would not be surprised if Ty takes over or even gets the job due to injury for some weeks. And the ADPs are just completely out of sorts here, and you need to take Ty in every draft right now.
This is maybe, I'm not a big disagreeing guy, and this is where I make my stand. And maybe it's because I love Aaron Jones so much for what he's done for me in the past. But the disrespect to Aaron Jones will not be tolerated. I hope that the Vikings fan and the Packers fan can come together and agree Aaron Jones is him.
Okay, we're gonna play a little blind rankings game here. Okay, you got running back A and running back B. I'm not telling you names. Running back A finished with 120 fantasy points, about 10.9 fantasy points per game, yards per carry 4.6. Okay. Running back B finished with 200 fantasy points, about 14.2 per game, yards per carry, exact same, 4.6. Who do you think those running backs are?
I think you're saying the first one is Aaron Jones. Because that just makes sense. And I don't care, and I will speak on it more. But First one, Aaron Jones. I'm trying to think of someone who finished high, but maybe like a name. I don't know. Give me David Montgomery. Give me
Bing, bing, bing. That's it, baby. Aaron Jones, David Montgomery. But the interesting thing that I wanted to point out, Aaron Jones is going as RB19, and David Montgomery is right next to him at RB18. And there's just so many more running backs in Aaron Jones's range that I am way more excited about their production than him.
It's fine. It's fine. It's just Aaron Jones has shown what he could do. He had a rough year last year. There was a lot of things going on. I just think he's going to have a bounce back year. And I think I will say he is at the drop off looking on. I think this is his last year. Maybe towards the end of the season. It's where I don't disagree with you on Ty Chandler, because I think maybe towards the end of the season Aaron will get hurt or Ty, But for fantasy purposes, I love me some Aaron Jones.
You know where I said I agreed with Josh largely for the most part being down on his team, but Josh said the record of the Vikings would be 7-10. They're over under 6.5. This is where I disagree with Josh. They're going under 6.5.
Josh, I'm sorry, 5 wins.
Let's get a big score. At least they have a cool pregame thing. They do.
They do. Maybe the best in the league.
Anyways, take us to our last AFC North team.
The final AFC North is just a little bit a ways away from Cleveland, is the great city of Cincinnati. We'll start off with the Louisiana kid, Joe Burrow. He's not from Louisiana, but I thought it was really fun when at LSU they put Burrow spelled with the anyway
or whatever.
Yeah, that was really fun. Joe Burrow was a bit of a disappointment for me last year. I tried to bid Joe Burrow up because I knew somebody liked him, and I ended up coming away with Joe Burrow for a lot higher than I would have wanted to spend. He ended up as my fantasy quarterback, and he was just a disappointment. He missed 7 games due to injury, had a really hard time staying healthy. His first 4 or so games, he had a calf strain that really limited his ability. He did have a nice chunk in the center where he finished, I think, QB 4 or 5. I would take Burrow if I get him for a deal. He's my QB 9, but the industry's 7. I'm not going to be mad if I get him, but I don't want to overspend like I have in the past.
I think Joe Burrow might have a revenge season this year. I think it's time we see him in the AFC Championship game again. I'm pretty excited about him for fantasy. I'm more excited about the pass catcher he'll be throwing to than I have been in previous years, but I really don't mind him since his price is much lower than it has been for quarterbacks in previous years.
Their wide receiver core I've always been very biased of. Trying to push that bias aside, and that bias that I have is against Ja'Marr Chase. And he's one of the reasons people say don't listen to training camp talk. Training camp, his rookie season, he was dropping I think he had the most drops amongst starting receivers, and his reason was, the balls don't have stripes anymore, so I'm trying to get used to it. And I thought he was going to be the biggest bust. And out he comes, his rookie season, just insane. He finished wide receiver 10 despite the health of Burrow. And although Jake Browning, I will say, played out of his mind filling in for Joe Burrow. So shout out Jake Browning.
Go Dogs.
His ADP is 4. He's my 4. I can't put him any lower than 4, even though I have a bias against him. It's just the health of Joe Burrow scares me. I like Ja'Marr Chase as a fantasy wide receiver because I have to, not because I want to. T. Higgins is going entirely too high for me. He finished as wide receiver 46. He does show some big playability. The famous catch where he tossed it over the pylon was pretty impressive, but his price is wide receiver 26, and that's just way too big for a wide receiver 2. He's my 30, and honestly, I might even move him lower.
I love Ja'Marr. He's my wide receiver 3 this year. Like I said, I think we got a revenge season loading, and so I'm pretty excited about the amount of volume that he's going to get. And what is this? Only his third year in the season now. So largely, I expect him to take over the league right now. But very, very excited about him and about one of the running backs.
We've got two running backs here. We've got Zach Moss and Chase Brown. Now, Zach Moss is top of the depth chart, currently going 26. He finished last season as 27 as the starter for the Colts when Jonathan Taylor was out. I don't dislike Zach Moss. I just like Chase more. And I think we were all excited that Chase was going to take over the backfield before they signed Zach Moss. I don't want anything to do with Zach Moss, and the reason that is Chase is going to eat up a lot of this receiving work, and I think possibly take over. And his price is just too good. He's going as 38. He's my 36, and I might even move that over a little. If you're too afraid to go get Chase in the draft, I would say you have a good chance of not getting him, because I think there are a few people that are high on him. And the minute that he shows out and has a big game, people are going to spend big money for him, especially in my leagues where Matt is in all of them. And I know he wants Chase Brown.
I love Chase. Last year, I think he was very explosive and a high note as like a rookie. And clearly they loved him enough to like kind of not spend big on a free agency class that had Saquon and Derrick Henry and Joe Mixon they got rid of and didn't want to keep. Like, I think they realized what they have in house and they buy the cheap, affordable option, Zach Moss. And during training camp, Moss isn't even getting the majority of the one run. It's Chase Brown, which is why I'm really excited about, like, give me the way cheaper option in drafts, just as someone that I think is going to really smash his ADP and outperform.
Give me that over under.
10.5. It's big. I think they sneak into playoffs with 10 wins though. So I would take the under on the 10.5.
I am also right at 10 wins at the under. I just want to say, every year, this is one of the hardest divisions to predict who's going to win at all. I'll rank them for you right now. At the bottom, that is the Cleveland Browns, 8 wins, largely based on their defense. In third, the Cincinnati Bengals at 10 wins. In second, give me the Baltimore Ravens with 11 wins. And also with 11 wins, the Pittsburgh Steelers and the tiebreaker. Give me the Pittsburgh Steelers to win the division. You said you're biased, Justin? You're damn right I'm biased. But I also do realistically think they could do it.
I think they could, but give me the Ravens. I'm taking the AFC North, and then I have Bengals in 2, Steelers in the 3 spot, Browns losing the division in 4.
It's fair. It's fair.
Let's finish.
I will
up
say,
yep.
I will say, if Ayuk does get traded to the Steelers, we've kind of talked about this, really helps the offense. I don't love that we would trade for him because I hate giving up pieces to trade for someone who I think is maybe a little more overrated than they should be.
He's mid.
I don't think he's mid. I think he's talented, but
NFC North, let's wrap it up. This is Dan's team, who, by the way, happy birthday to Dan. This will be belated when you receive this, but today is Dan's birthday.
Can you give him a sultry happy birthday song?
What do you mean? Like
Marilyn Monroe singing to JFK happy birthday.
No, I can't do that.
Fine. Move on.
Bears. The hype is real for Mr. Caleb Williams, the #1 draft pick this year, going as quarterback 15 in fantasy. And I really like this price. He is stepping into arguably one of the best situations a rookie quarterback has ever stepped into with just the surrounding weapons. And if I want a second quarterback in a draft, I love targeting Caleb. I really don't want him to be my starter and only quarterback that I draft, but I really don't mind if I take, let's say, Jordan Love and then pair that with Caleb Williams. I think that's a pretty great, like, waiting on quarterback strategy. So Caleb is someone who I definitely think will be very usable and streamable. Will probably have his rookie games and moments, but I'm keeping an eye on him for sure, if not drafting him as my second quarterback.
Yeah, Caleb's been really fun in training camp. I think he's set the training camp record for this year of most TDs thrown by QB. Like I said, don't listen to training camp too much, but he has looked really good and people have spoke really high of him. And I mean, arguably the best receiving core in the league. So I think it's hard to deny the situations he's in.
We've talked about waiver wire quarterbacks and streaming quarterbacks a lot. So we're going to take a little break from the Bears, Justin, and we're going to play a little waiver wire quarterback game. So I'm going to start at quarterback 11, and I'm going to give you basically the next 9 quarterbacks, and you tell me how you would rank them and who you would trust the most on like a bye week or injury week. And so these are largely going to be quarterbacks 11 through 20. But here's the list of names. We have Brock Purdy, Jaden Daniels, Tua, Jared Goff, Caleb Williams, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, Kirk Cousins, and Matthew Stafford.
Okay, tell me if I forget someone.
Okay.
But at the bottom, give me Matthew Stafford. Next, give me Kirk Cousins.
Okay.
You said Trevor Lawrence?
Yep, he's on there.
He's my next one.
Okay.
After Trevor Lawrence, give me Brock Purdy. Then give me Caleb Williams, Jared Goff, Justin Herbert, Tua, and finally give me Jaden at the top.
Okay. Pretty high on Justin Herbert compared to industry, I feel like.
Yeah, I am. And it has nothing to do more than I think he's better than his situation and his receiving core. And I think he'll be okay.
I think this is a good group to keep names on because this is largely the group where if I need someone to fill in for a bye week or injury, I'm largely looking at these quarterbacks. And really, it's going to depend on the defense they're playing and the matchup for that week. I think Jaden Daniels and Caleb probably have the highest upside of the whole group. And so I would take it as you will, but I think it is kind of a good practice to kind of know how you rank these like 9-ish quarterbacks. Let's get back to the Bears. Bear down. And we're talking about the running backs right now. We have DeAndre Swift, who they signed in free agency, ADP 76. And Khalil Herbert will probably be the backup there at ADP 157. They also have Roschon Johnson and Travis Homer, but they have in the past kind of really leaned into the committee approach as a team. I largely think this is going to be Swift's job. My worry is the new offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron, previously with the Seahawks. Shane Waldron does feature usually one running back. However, the way that Shane features them is not usually with receiving work, which is DeAndre Swift's strength. It is usually pure rushes, how you would normally see a running back getting work. And so I'm a little bit worried about Swift for that regard. That being said, his ADP at 76 is pretty low for what typically is going to be a starting running back in an offense everyone's pretty excited about. And so I could definitely be swayed to take him earlier or not take him. He's one of the more confusing ones for me, but largely I don't think his price is that crazy. And I do think he'll probably have a good year. I'm just not sold on him.
I think we've seen it in mock drafts. People are just, he goes for so cheap. And that's why I like Swift. I don't think he's going to be this amazing back. But what I do think is that if I get him as my third running back on a team, I'm pretty excited.
I think everyone's really excited about the pass catchers on this team, though, because we have 3 studs. We have DJ Moore, ADP 34, Keenan Allen, ADP 67, and the rookie, Rome Odunze, go Dogs, ADP 101. And so that's kind of how they're shaking out in fantasy drafts right now. Let me go back. I didn't touch base on Dan's sentence about the team and I also had him rank these wide receivers. So this is how Dan ranks them. And he actually agrees with the industry right now. He went DJ Keenan, then Rome. And he said he thinks Rome will have big plays and highlight reels, just not consistency. And as far as the team, he says he thinks that they have the best top to bottom roster in the division. And the only question is whether Caleb is who they say he is. And if he is, then he thinks they will take the division. Bold take by Mr. Dan. And so I disagree with his receiver shakeout. The answer to me is clearly Rome, and there is no bias there at all. But for real, I don't actually mind DJ. He's going a little bit pricey. I'm really in on Rome mainly because you are getting a significant discount compared to the other two. And I think he will definitely have games that pop. And so I think he's a great flex to potentially use. And he's really the wide receiver that I'm targeting on that team. But I think they all have pretty high upside, and it's very similar to the Texans situation, where if you can get the pass catcher that's going to be the number one, you are going to have a great situation in terms of your fantasy wide receiver.
But what I think about when I think about the Bears in general is Ocean's 11.
What, did you guys get a group rate or something?
Gentlemen, welcome to Las Vegas. Is that right? Everybody eating? Good.
Honestly, I would take any of them and I'd be excited, especially because we've seen Keenan fall in drafts. I think we've even seen DJ fall in drafts. So I'd be excited to get one of them on my team.
Cole Kmet's the other pass catcher here. He's going as tight end 15. I'm really only looking at him for deep leagues or if you have a tight end injury or bye week. Do you feel differently about Cole?
I feel the same.
Cool. This team has a win total of 8.5. I think we hit the over.
Yeah, I do too. Right over 9.
Now what we've all been waiting for. We have the little graphic of Steven, Dan, Josh all racing the lion. Who's going to finish in first? The lion is going to actually finish in first. And then we see these three kind of struggling behind the lion. I mean, how I picture it is the Packers racing out in front. Everyone's hyped on Jordan Love. And then reality sets in. They realize they made a terrible decision on paying him so much money. And he chokes at the end. Caleb Williams comes into town and smashes Jordan Love and the Packers. Dan and the Bears take the 2 spot in the division, and the Packers stumble to 3, and the Vikings, a DNF, did not even finish the race. We see just kind of way in the back there, JJ McCarthy just trying to chuck the ball, or he hands the baton to JJ, but it's dropped. And JJ, Justin Jefferson, and they get 4th in the division. So Lions, Bears, Packers, oh my.
Oh my. My rankings are at the bottom of the pack. Give me the Vikings. Then in third, with the same amount of wins as the team in second, give me the Packers at 9 wins. Give me the Bears at 9 wins and the tiebreaker. And then give me the Lions.
And that'll do it for our full division preview.
Wow.
We've gone through all 32 teams. Hopefully, this provides a great foundation for you all, largely talking about almost every single fantasy relevant player. And now we can kind of get into a lot more of the fun draft strategy. We're going through preseason recaps and really kind of get into our biggest sleepers and how we get into preparing you for drafts. And so thanks for sticking with us through these longer episodes. But yeah, any last words for our loyal listeners?
We appreciate you sticking through it. This is a lot of numbers and a lot of statistics. Moving forward will be a lot more, yes, numbers and statistics, but it'll be a lot more exciting. But this has been really fun for us, I think, I've learned a lot studying these divisions and these players. So, yeah, that's it.
I'm Matt. This is Justin, and we're during work hours. Thanks for listening.